Hello again. I've observed that more and more things are being altered these days to avoid upsetting the very small number of transsexual people in the world. Some of these things are quite loopy but essentially harmless, like the National Health Service claiming that men can breastfeed or give birth to babies, for example. The avoidance of dressing a group of people as ladies and gentlemen or boys and girls, just in case there's some that aren't either in the party, is another example, falls into this same category. As does the claim, of course, made in school sex education lessons that there are 192 or 486 or however many genders it is claimed exists today. We most of us chuckle at such lunacy, but realise that it is just people trying to be up to date and with it, obviously. Sometimes, however, the consequences of bending over backward to show how right on you are about matters relating to transsexualism can have a darker side, and they can put children at hazard. Before going any further, I must remind viewers that I'm utterly indifferent to what clothes anybody wears or which gender he or she chooses to adopt. Provided we're talking about adults and the whole thing is consensual, I can have no possible interest in a man or woman's gender identity or sexual preferences. It's no affair of mine. Where children are involved, though, it's a different matter entirely. It is my business and everybody else's. There's an awful lot of sexual abuse of girls at school lately by schoolboys. I give a link in the description to this video to a news item on this. Girls as young as 6 or 7 are being assaulted by older schoolboys. This is obviously an undesirable state of affairs. I'll come back to it in a moment. Let's turn now to a school called Morden Primary School in the English town of Swindon. Somebody visiting the school a short while ago told the head teacher, Anna Wilcox, that the lavatories at the school were not accessible enough. I mean, they're all on the ground floor and wheelchair accessible and so on. So what do viewers think was meant by this? Well, it's that business which I mentioned earlier about the fact that it is considered old-fashioned now to think in terms of what is called gender binary. Why should we assume there are only 2 genders? Disgusting. What are those children at Morden Primary School to do if they want a wee and do not identify as either male or female? This is a far more serious problem to the headmistress and whether they can read and write or know their times tables. Then again, what about trans children? Imagine a little boy who thinks he's a girl or vice versa. Which facilities are such children to use? I dare say that some people think I'm making this all up as some sort of elaborate joke. So I also give a link to a newspaper article about this business. The head solution was to make all the lavatories gender neutral. This is such a terrible idea that I hardly know where to begin explaining why. I myself am completely indifferent to this kind of thing as an adult. In some countries, Russia, Soviet Russia, when I visited there many years ago, it was common to find a female attendant in a men's lavatory. This doesn't bother me in the slightest, personally. Most people, though, especially women and girls, dislike coming across someone of the opposite gender in their facilities. I can quite see why. Can anybody see why this kind of thing might be hideously inappropriate in a school? The urinals, by the way, at the school were left in use, which meant that boys were standing there urinating as little girls walked in. Anybody think that's a bit yucky, or is it just me being delicate like an old maid or something? With abuse in school settings by pupils on the increase, can anybody see how this could pose a hazard for a 7-year-old girl who went to have a wee and found a bunch of 11-year-old boys hanging around in there? I honestly cannot imagine any parent wanting a setup of this kind. Fortunately, the parents made their feelings plain to the school and the arrangement has now been abandoned. What was the head thinking, we ask ourselves? This is the kind of thing which happens when well-meaning people start trying to show sensitivity to minorities, of course. Because matters relating to trans issues at the moment are very big, one quite sees why this foolish woman took such a step, especially since she had been told that her facilities were not inclusive, a frightful accusation to face in the modern world. I certainly don't want to see children put into awkward positions of this sort. Situations, in fact, which could be hazardous to little girls, but I have an idea that very few adults at all are keen on this kind of thing either. I don't think it's just me. As I said, it doesn't bother me with adults, but I'm certainly not campaigning for unisex facilities of this kind. Who genuinely does want this? Are trans people asking for it, or is it just the kind of mad things which left-wing types feel show them in a good light and enhance their credentials as progressive people?